Welcome to the Daily Decameron, Tales to Connect Us in Troubled Times. Episode 5, The Secret of the Stone. Today, the story that introduced the world to one of Italy's favorite fools. Boccaccio probably based the character Calandrino on a Florentine painter, Nozzo di Perino, whose nickname was Calandrino, meaning a common meadowlark, because he was known for being a gullible simpleton. But the character Boccaccio brought to life was entirely original, and Boccaccio was so fond of his creation that he devoted no less than 4 of the Decameron's 100 tales to the exploits of Calandrino and his so-called friends Bruno and Buffalmacco, who delight in his gullibility and exploit his belief in folk magic to play endless pranks on him. They steal his pig and pin the theft on him, get him to fall for a phony love potion, and, in one tale, even manage to convince him that he's pregnant. Like another Tuscan creation, Pinocchio, Calandrino captured the imagination of readers and passed directly into Italian popular culture, making countless appearances in folklore, plays, stories, and operas for centuries. To this day, the word Calandrino means a particularly amusing kind of fool, one who is so gullible he actually thinks he's clever. Like Dante and Shakespeare, Boccaccio coined many such words that ended up finding a home in the language. In this story, he creates a mythical land of plenty he calls Bengodi, a blending of the words bene and godere that means enjoy well, a word still used in Italian to describe a fantasy land of abundance and indulgence. So what is it about Calandrino that makes him such an enduring character? It's not just his amusing stupidity. That alone would have simply made him a cartoon. What really brings him to life is his innocence. Like Pinocchio, and perhaps a bit like Boccaccio himself, Calandrino is, at heart, a little boy who never really grew up. And so, for all his impatience, his bad choices, his wild temper tantrums, and his insatiable appetites, it's Calandrino's sweet, innocent optimism that makes us love him, just the way a parent loves a child. Ottava giornata, novella terza, Calandrino e l'Heliotrope. The 8th day, the 3rd novella, Calandrino and the Heliotrope. Not long ago, there lived in Florence a painter, a simpleton named Calandrino, who could often be found in the company of 2 other painters, Bruno and Buffalmacco. These 2 seemed like pleasant enough fellows, but in truth they were quite shrewd, and they spent time with Calandrino because they were constantly amused by his foolishness. There was also in Florence at that time a charming and successful young man named Maso del Saggio. Maso had heard endless stories about the foolish Calandrino and decided to have a little fun at his expense. One day, visiting the Church of San Giovanni, he saw Calandrino staring at the paintings over the altar, and he knew his moment had come. Maso recruited a friend to help him, and the 2 men walked over to where Calandrino was standing. Pretending not to notice him, they started talking about the secret powers of various stones, Maso holding forth like a great lapidary expert. Calandrino perked up his ears, listened for a while, and when he could no longer contain himself, strolled over to the men and, as casually as he could, asked Maso where such stones might be found. "Ah," replied Maso, "most of them are in Bengodi, a land of pleasure and plenty, where the vineyards are strung with sausages, a duck and a goose cost a penny, and there's an entire mountain made of Parmesan cheese, where people make macaroni and ravioli all day long, and toss them down from the mountaintop for whoever passes by. And if you're thirsty, there's a stream nearby that flows with the finest vernaccia." "Oh," said Calandrino, "what a wonderful country. Have you ever been?" "If I've been there once, I've been there 1,000 times," said Maso. "And how many miles is it from here?" Calandrino asked. "Oh, more than 1,000, I should think," Maso told him. "So, further than the Abruzzi, then," Calandrino concluded. Throughout all this, Maso managed to keep a straight face, and his demeanor was so convincing that poor Calandrino believed every word he told him. "Well, That's too far away for me, Calandrino continued. But if it were closer, I'd sure love to see the macaroni tumbling down that mountain and eat myself sick. But tell me, can't you find any of those magical stones around here? Well, there is a stone we lapidaries call the Heliotrope, said Mazo. A stone of such extraordinary power that whoever carries it on his person cannot be seen by anyone. That's some power, said Calandrino. And where exactly can you find that stone? Mostly in the Mugnone River Valley. And how big might it be, and what color? They come in all sizes, but they're all kind of a blackish color. Calandrino, desperately trying to keep all this in his mind, blurted out that he just remembered he had something to do, and rushed off, determined to find himself a heliotrope. But then he thought of his special friends, Bruno and Buffalmacco, and decided he should share what he had learned with them. And so he spent the rest of the morning looking for them, so they could all go search for stones together. When he finally found them, working at the convent of the nuns of Faenza, he took them aside and said, "My friends, how would you like to become the wealthiest men in Florence? Because, trust me, I have just learned from a very reliable source that in the Mugnone River there is a stone that makes whoever carries it invisible. We need to go and find it right away before anyone else does. And once we do, all we have to do is put it in our pockets, go to the money changers, whose tables, as you know, are always loaded with silver and florins, and help ourselves to as much as we want. No one will see us, and we'll get rich quick and never have to work again." When Bruno and Buffalmacco heard this, they exchanged a conspiratorial glance, and pretending to be amazed, they praised Calandrino with great enthusiasm. "What is the name of this magical stone?" asked Buffalmacco. Calandrino, whose brain was like a bowl of pasta, had already forgotten the name. "Who cares what it's called?" he said. "All that matters is its magical powers. Let's get going." "All right," said Bruno. "But how do we know what it looks like?" "They come in all sizes," said Calandrino, "but they're all black. So we'll just pick up all the black stones we see until we find the right one." Bruno looked at Buffalmacco and said, "Calandrino has a great idea, but I think we should wait. It's noon, and the sun will have dried out the rocks along the river, making even the black ones look white. And besides, it's a work day. The riverbank will be crowded with people who might see us and guess what we're up to. I think we should wait till Sunday morning." So the three agreed that the following Sunday they would set out together to look for the elusive heliotrope. And Calandrino made his comrades promise not to tell a soul in the meantime, since, after all, it had been confided to him in the strictest confidence. And once they agreed, he felt it only right to tell them everything he had learned about the wondrous land of Bengodi as well, swearing that although it was incredible, every word of it was true. When Sunday finally arrived, Calandrino rose at dawn and rounded up his friends, and the three men headed out through the San Gallo gate and down to the Mugnone. When they got to the riverbank, Calandrino, overcome with excitement, raced ahead, darting this way and that, and every time he saw a black stone he picked it up and stuffed it into his shirt. His companions followed behind, picking up a stone every now and then to play along. But Calandrino, in his eagerness, soon found that his shirt was completely full, so he lifted the skirt of his tunic, tied it around his waist to make a pouch, which was also soon filled with stones. So he tied his cloak into a bag and filled that up as well. Seeing Calandrino bent over and completely loaded down with stones, Bruno and Buffalmacco decided it was time to put their plan into place. "Where's Calandrino gone to now?" said Bruno. Buffalmacco, who could see Calandrino standing right there, looked this way and that, and said, "I don't know. He was right here in front of us a little while ago." "Ha," said Bruno. "A little while ago indeed. He's probably already back home eating lunch, and he's left us with this crazy task of looking for black stones." Buffalmacco shook his head. "Well," he said, "it serves us right for letting him trick us so easily. Who besides us would be so foolish as to fall for this prank and believe there could be a stone of such great powers lying here in the Mugnone?" Hearing all this, Calandrino realized he must have found the stone. He was standing right in front of his friends, but its powers were making him invisible. Overjoyed by his good fortune, he turned without saying a word and began to tiptoe off toward home. "Let's call it a day and get out of here," said Buffalmacco. "All right, let's go," Bruno answered. "But I swear to God that Calandrino will never fool me again. And the next time I see him, I'll give him a stone to remember me by." And with that, he picked up a stone from the riverbed and hurled it at Calandrino, hitting him in the heel. Calandrino, panting in pain as quietly as he could, raised his wounded foot and kept hopping away toward home. "Well," said Buffalmacco, following him, "when I see him, I'm going to throw an even sharper stone like this one at him." And he hurled a pointed rock at Calandrino, hitting him square in the kidneys. And so, in this manner, they stoned Calandrino all the way from the river to the San Gallo gate, where, throwing away all the stones they had collected, they ran ahead and stopped to let the customs guards in on the trick. When Calandrino tiptoed through the gate, the guards pretended not to see him, doubling over with laughter as soon as he had passed. It was lunchtime, and the streets were nearly empty, so no one said a word to Calandrino as he hurried home. But when he opened the front door of his house, there was his wife, Monna Tessa, waiting for him at the top of the stairs. "Where the devil have you been?" she scolded. "Everyone's done eating lunch, and you're just getting home now?" Hearing this, Calandrino knew he must be visible again, and in despair he screamed, "Curse you, woman! Now you've done it!" He dumped his load of stones on the floor and ran at his wife like a wild beast, flailing and kicking in rage. Hearing the ruckus, Bruno and Buffalmacco, who had followed him home, called out to him from the street below. Calandrino opened the window and invited them in. They surveyed the chaos, the piles of stones strewn about the room, the disheveled Monna Tessa sobbing in the corner, and Calandrino sitting flushed and sweaty on the floor. "What's all this, Calandrino?" asked Bruno. "Have you decided to become a stonemason with all these rocks?" "And what's going on with you and Monna Tessa?" asked Buffalmacco. "It looks like you've had quite the tiff." Calandrino, exhausted, out of breath, and overcome with grief over the fortune he thought he had found and lost, sat numb and speechless. "If you were mad at us," Buffalmacco continued, "you didn't have to take it out on us by tricking us into looking for that magic stone with you, and then abandoning us without so much as a Godspeed or a go to hell. This is the last time you'll pull the wool over our eyes." Calandrino mustered all his remaining strength and replied, "My friends, don't be angry. It's not what you think. The truth is, I actually did find the stone. When you were asking where I was not more than 10 paces away from you. And when you headed home, I kept just a bit ahead of you the whole way." And he told them everything he had said and done since he had become invisible. And for further proof, he even showed them the bruises on his back and his heels from the rocks they had thrown at him. Bruno and Buffalmacco nodded in wide-eyed amazement at everything he said. "And when I passed through the San Gallo gate," Calandrino went on, "all loaded down with all these stones you see here, no one said a word to me. And you know how unpleasant those customs guards can be, wanting to inspect everything you bring through. And then I passed many friends and neighbors on the street, and none of them even spoke to me. No one could see me. But then I got home, and my wife, well, you know, being a woman, she can cause things to lose their powers, and she saw me right away and broke the spell. And just like that, I went from being the luckiest man in Florence to the unluckiest." And with that, his rage returned, and he was about to take it out on Monna Tessa all over again. But Bruno and Buffalmacco, holding back their laughter, rushed over to hold back Calandrino as well, telling him his wife was not to blame. It was really all his fault, because, after all, he knew perfectly well that women could cause magical things to lose their power, so he should have told her to stay away from him all that day. And perhaps it was all God's way of punishing him for tricking his friends, whom he should have told about his discovery the minute he made it, instead of sneaking off as he had. Speaking in this way, they managed to reconcile the weeping wife and her hapless husband. And so, at length, pleased with their morning's entertainment, Bruno and Buffalmacco went about their way. leaving Calandrino with a heavy heart and a house filled with stones. Thanks for listening to The Daily Decameron, a production of the Italian Cultural Institute of San Francisco. Anna Maria Di Giorgio, director. This program was produced by Franca Cavallaro and edited by Enrica Cavalli, with music performed by John Sayles. I'm your host and translator, Steve Siegelman. We hope you'll join us for more episodes in both English and Italian. Meanwhile, stay well, stay connected, and share your favorite stories with the people you love.